Tower.
Sweet. All right, guys, we are live. Welcome again to another Deconversion Stories. Today, I'm speaking with Faithless South, and I do have a question for you. Your actual name is Evan, or is it Evans?
Evans, yes.
Oh, so it is Evans. Okay.
Yes,
I've
it's
just
Evans. I had the blessed fortune of being given two last names.
Evans and Murphy. Yeah. You could actually
Yep.
switch them, and it would be the same thing too.
Yeah,
It could be
absolutely.
Murphy Evans, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so basically what we do here, as you know, you've seen some of my shows, that we just talk about our paths away from belief and faith and our religious background. And I like to sort of find out, you go back to sort of the beginning when you started thinking, I don't know about this anymore. And your path from that first thought to where you are now, being somewhat of an activist and stuff like that. And just tell us that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So to kick things off, I was raised extremely Christian. My parents were very, very strong believers, very active in the church.
Okay.
That was from the time I never remember not going to church as a child.
Right.
And I was as involved, I think, as a person can possibly be. So played in the praise and worship band, and had preached on a couple of occasions as a teenager, and was very active in youth groups and things like that. So my childhood was very centric on church and Christianity in particular. And I never really got out of that bubble. And of course, I live in South Alabama, so everyone here is Christian, whether they're actually a believer or not. So I never really was.
Yeah, they still identify, I guess, as Christian, even if they may be faltering.
Well, it's a weird cultural thing. It's one of those. They probably don't think about it enough to realize that they're not actually devout believers, because we do have those that are, in depth in their theology and secure in their beliefs and things like that. But the majority of people are culturally Christian, at least in my area, as far as by my estimation. They go to church on Sundays, and that's just it's more of a country club Christianity than an actual faith-based belief system. So, but I was extremely active. I was beyond just cultural Christian. And whenever I was in my mid-teens, I started doing martial arts. And so I ran up against a different group of people than I was normally used to. And I guess you could say that was kind of the start of the deconversion process.
Did they have just ideas that were different from what you knew to be, realities or anything?
Yeah, pretty much. The instructors were not Christian. They were openly more of a Eastern Buddhist type of deistic, really poorly defined religious background. They were still theists, but they weren't. Theists in the way that I was used to people being. And so, that kind of lacked on for a few years. And there were other people that were in the class that were also Christians. But so I got my first run in with non-believers, non-Christians rather.
Right.
And so that started to get my wheels turning on things.
Okay.
And then I'd say the real breaking point is I went on a missions trip whenever I was I was 16, almost 17 at the time. Went on a missions trip to Kosovo, and it's a predominantly Muslim area, of course. And at that point in time, it wasn't actually its own country. It was still kind of a former province of the Soviet Union. It was kind of a rough area. Like I say, I was serious about it. And while there, I met a whole slew of Muslims, and they were more culturally Muslim than devout. The women didn't wear the burqas or the hijab or anything like that, but they still prayed every day, and they believed in Allah, and they believed in Muhammad and things like that. And so as this trip went on, I started to think, here I am in these people's country, and the country is relatively broken, and they're getting a lot of comfort out of their belief system. They're praying to Allah and various other things. And here I am telling them, hey, guys, you're wrong.
Yeah,
All
right.
that stuff, that's crap. Jesus is the only way, and y'all are all going to burn in hell if you don't convert to my particular belief system. And so that
Do you find it kind of funny that when you say something like that, you don't really recognize it as being a threat so much, yet others that you're telling it to might view it that way?
well, that was the other thing, because the people were there were like, no, you're wrong, you know,
Yeah,
and then you're stuck in an impasse. Like, how do I know who's actually wrong in this situation?
sure.
So while I was over there, it didn't really strike me that much. But then during the kind of the decompression time, whenever I got back stateside, I stayed over there for like 33, 35 days. It's a fairly long stay. And so whenever I got back, I thought, now hold on here. Now I believe in a God that is supposedly loving and actually cares about people. And here I am going overseas to convert these wild heathens that believe in this crazy stuff,
Yeah,
Allah and Muhammad. And so it was really I guess what kicked me off was the thought that the God that I believed that I served would see fit to send these people who were, for all other intents and purposes, at least as good, if not better, than anybody that I knew. They were caring, kind, loving people.
sure.
And so that really started breaking it down. So I at that point in time, I was trying to reconcile with the people that I knew from martial arts that I'd grown to care about, that had a wildly different view of spirituality in general, and then the people that I had met on the missions trip that served a different monotheistic God. And over time, that kind of a very easy believism Christianity, which is not theologically sound at all. It's not biblical at all. But kind of like, well, God is love, and He loves everybody, and everybody's going to go to heaven as long as they're a reasonable person. So whenever I was in my late teens, early 20s, I hit a really rough spot in my life, and I decided, hey, I'm going to throw myself back into this Christianity thing. And
like a comfort blanket or something, I guess.
Yeah, it was kind of like a returning home, something that was normal, something that was familiar to myself. And I also kind of had the feeling, because I had strayed from the faith, I was being punished by by a more classical Christian God, And so I threw myself back in as hard as I possibly could, and started ministering to youth groups, and was highly involved in my church, and just really tried to force myself to believe the way that I used to. And unfortunately, I just never could get there. That went on for over a year, probably. Of just, it's the old, if you just really, I can't remember who the challenge came from, but if you just really believe it for 90 days, you'll be convinced at the end. And that was not my experience, because once I'd kind of fallen away from the classical Christian view of God, I was never able to get that back.
So trying to do that, the 90-day thing, like, how did you feel like when you were realizing that it wasn't really happening for you? Like, were you pissed off or concerned or anything like that? Or
it was I don't know. It was a weird amalgamation, or just a weird bundle of emotions.
Okay.
I was, at that point in time, I was probably more frustrated and dare I say depressed, just in general. So my entire view of the world was pretty bleak, and I was trying to salvage that, but I never could. So I went through this weird trying to like rectify various things that I thought to be true about the world. And on the heels of that, several years ago, I decided to start really looking into, how do we know what we know is true, because Islam says this, Buddhism says that, Hinduism says this, Christianity says this. I was brought up in this society, but I know people from another that are just as devout as I was. And now here I am I have no idea what to think about anything. So
Mhm.
I really dug down to the core and started reading a lot of philosophy and David Hume and Kierkegaard and
Oh,
Kant,
okay.
and
Wow, cool.
just really got into a seeker mood. And at this point in time, I was something like a vague deist. Like there is
Okay.
probably a creator of the universe, but he's not he's not personal. He doesn't answer prayers. Practically everybody's full of crap whenever they're talking about God, you know.
Yeah.
And it was a really slow deconversion process that wound me up, and it was probably 2 years ago that I realized, hey, look, there's no reason for me to continue believing in some sort of a vague, non-personal God that I can't prove in any sort of fashion. And
Right.
I've learned all this about determining how we determine truth and how we come across things, and how different people have different interpretations of what they believe to be true, et cetera, et cetera. And so at that point in time, I just decided, hey, screw it, I don't really believe in God, and kind of shelved the whole God thing. And then I'd
Mhm.
say it was a year ago, almost to the day, that I came out of the closet as an atheist, which was
Oh, congrats for that, because that's not
yeah.
an easy thing to do.
Well, especially in my neck of the woods, because as
Right.
far as I know, and my wife is an atheist too. She's much more clear headed about these things than I am. She just went straight to it. But as far as I know, we're the only two atheists in our city. And it's not a
Wow.
big city, but I'm not aware of any others. And so um, it's one of those things that at least here you become extremely ostracized. The good news is
Oh, shitty.
I knew enough people for a long enough period of time. Whenever I came out, my friends, the people in my social group, were like, "Oh, you're an atheist. You're not really an atheist. You don't eat babies and advocate
I
for
don't know.
communism."
Where did that even come from? I don't even know.
I don't know, but it's such a trope. If I could,
Big time.
if you could nail down atheism, it's like you're a communist, you're
Yeah.
Hitler, and you eat babies. Those are what everybody universally thinks. And so
That's
whenever I
what
came out,
SJ was fucking ranting about the other day. Communism plus atheism equals, uh,
oh,
slaughter of millions. I'm like, no, that's
but
not how it works.
to be because I genuinely believe that she's a smart lady, at least to get to
Yeah,
the the position that she's at. She has such an enormous blind spot. You know,
yeah,
it's
that's right.
similar. It's similar to Ben Carson, as who I draw the analogous to, because Ben Carson's one of the most gifted brain surgeons that has ever existed. Period,
Mhm.
hands down. He was the first person to do infant conjoined twin children who were conjoined at the brain, and they
Right.
both survived. But he believes that the pyramids were grain storage. You know, because that's what the Bible says. And I thought, whenever I heard that, I said, how can somebody that's this talented, this smart, believe that the earth was actually flooded and that the pyramids were grain storage for Joshua or whoever? It's like, come on. So
Have you
she's the
been to the
same way,
pyramids?
though.
They're fucking huge, man. They
Yeah.
don't need that much grain for crying out loud.
Yeah, and the fact that they're tombs is well documented. I just
Yeah, yeah,
I shake my head sometimes at the enormous blind spots that theism presents to people.
yeah. I know.
And I'm not an anti-theist by any stretch of the imagination. I have good friends who are theists who are very devout in their beliefs and have a very solid, logically sound belief structure. But I am anti-theist whenever it comes to like fundamentalism. If
Yeah.
you believe that the pyramids were grain storage and that the Earth is 6,000 years old, or that it's flat,
Yeah, I
or
was just gonna say, and
or that the
flat.
Earth the whole thing flooded, like get out of here.
Or that
You
there's a
know that
firmament up there with water on the other side. Like, what the
Yeah.
fuck?
So it that basically
Space
sums
scuba
up the
diving.
yeah, exactly. Gosh, people are and like I say, they can be otherwise
Oh,
coherent
you all right? Oh, there
people.
you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then have this just enormous blind spot whenever it comes to theism.
Yeah.
And so but that
They're
was
trained
that was
that way, though.
basically
They're basically raised to think like that, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up as a fundamentalist. Like I was taught that the Earth was 6,000 years old, that Noah's flood was global, that these things actually happen. And it wasn't until well into my deconversion process that I said, "Huh, this evolution thing has something backing it,"
Right.
other than just some 2,000-year-old text that some Iron Age people decided to scribble down.
Yeah.
So
People that didn't even know where the sun went at night, by the way.
yeah, come on. So that was basically from start to finish where I was at. And like I say, because I was as devout as I believe that someone can be. Like if you'd have asked me whenever I was, say, 16, if God was real, my answer would have been emphatically 100% yes, and that Jesus died on the cross and he was resurrected 3 days later, and that he existed for our sins and was the redemptive path to overall salvation. And
Right.
and so there's a lot of, especially here, there's a lot of frustration because it's the old adage, well, you were never actually saved. You never actually believed it,
Yeah, no
And
true
it's like,
Scotsman fallacy. Yeah.
yeah, and you weren't a real Christian. Get real. You always had, and these doubts never entered my mind at certain points in my life. And luckily through, I hate to say it, but the catalyst to my deconversion was a missions trip. Was
I've never heard that yet. I'll tell you that. I've never heard
Well,
that.
it was getting in another society, overarching belief system that that really made me think, hey, these are decent people. These people believe just as fervently as I do. And what makes them any more right or wrong than I am?
Right.
And then once you start down that path, you realize that basically the whole house of cards collapse.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, because they can't all be true, right? So
no, and especially in the cases of the major religions, the ones that are still around, the juggernauts, the Hindus, the Islam, and the Christians, and to a lesser degree, the Jewish faiths. Because
well, those are the
none of
Abrahamics,
those,
so they're all kind of connected. So.
yeah, none of those mesh together well. They're all mutually exclusive, and so you're left with the proposition that either one of them is true or none of them is true. And and my search for evidence that I would feel comfortable believing in definitely led me to the conclusion that none of them were true, and that in fact this whole God proposition was not true in the first place. So
okay, yeah, I mean that's what I often ask people is like, I know you feel right now that your beliefs are true because you were indoctrinated to do so. But imagine if you were born in India, do you really think that you'd still be following this belief pattern, or would you be following something else? And that one kind of makes them think a little bit. So, I mean, because they all can't be true. So how do you know yours is compared to a Hindu's or a Jain or even someone that might believe Shintoism?
mm-hmm. Yeah,
right, so.
or the thousands of dead religions that are in the wastebasket of recycled ideas. It's
I like that.
It's one of those hard to get people to actually think about the variety of religions that are out there, and this isn't a problem for the polytheists, because they just say, hey, they're all true, to some degree or another.
Yeah, cop out.
And like, fair enough. Yeah, and like, fair enough, man. If that's what you want to believe, but I'm not sure how. It's the whole, especially in those cases, I'm not sure how, one, you make a leap of belief from one to another. Like, this is X God, from an experience that you have, or two, that you would even call that thing God, like, because it's not all powerful, it's not all loving, it's not all knowing. It's just some sort of a higher order of being that you have zero evidence for, or very very tenuous evidence for, with no explanatory power.
It's not really
So,
even evidence, really, because all you're getting is arguments, and arguments are not necessarily evidence, right? So, I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
You can
And so,
argue, but you have to have something to back that argument up with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a strong atheist. I come from the position that there are no gods. I don't
Right.
do the whole, oh well, I don't believe the truth claims that religious people make, or it's a lack of belief. No, I take it a step further and I say, hey, look, guys, there is no God, or there is no God.
Yeah, there's none in
Depending on who you're
general.
talking to.
All
And so,
creations of humans.
yeah, they're clever creations for whatever reason, evolutionary or otherwise, that we've made.
I think it is an evolutionary thing. I think we needed that for social reasons in our early days, but we don't need that shit anymore. So,
Yeah, I think you can make a really strong case for the
mm-hmm.
evolution, at least the origins of religion and evolution. Similar that I would make the case for the origins of morality in evolutionary biology, and then it grew exponentially from social structures that reinforce the belief systems.
Right, right.
And like you say, we don't, the atheist community, what loose cobbled together bunch of people you can have on a non-belief proposition.
Yeah.
I feel needs.
There's some pretty odd ones, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's whenever your only unifying aspect is a disbelief in something, it doesn't really get you very far. And that's why I like to label myself as a humanist and a centrist and other things, where you kind of start to build onto that. I think that we have a long way to go to replace the substructures that religious beliefs provided humanity. And
I agree.
That's one of those. That's somewhere that we as a community have been woefully inadequate.
Yes, I agree.
And still do struggle with, the loss of an ideal life. Because with Christianity, it's real easy. You emulate Christ, and that's how you live a good life. It's very clear cut. You can pick up the book and read, and with a non-theistic bent to your life, and I hate to use the word, but a non-theistic worldview with all the caveats that has, it's hard to replace the axioms that you live your life around. And the community as a whole, we still got a long way to go on that.
I believe so too.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm going to be devoting a significant portion of my time to in the near future, is at least explaining what replaced those things in my life.
Well, you've touched on that a little bit in I think in what the hell video of yours that I watched that you kind of touched on that.
I don't have a YouTube channel or any videos up currently.
Maybe it's someone else I'm thinking of.
Yeah, probably so. There are other people that are working on these problems. So
okay, I could have sworn
I have a blog. I'm not as active as I once was. I got bogged down on the subject of morality, which is a never-ending hole. By the way, if you ever decide to dive, it's just there is no bottom. But very soon I'm going to start doing that, and I've tossed around the idea of starting a YouTube channel, but have not pulled the trigger on it yet.
You should. You should. And there's lots of us within the community that will help you to promote that. So. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, especially.
I think you've got some ideas that are worth sharing there for sure.
Yeah, I think it's something that's not focused in the community very well, and we and I do the same thing as an atheist. I spend a lot of time attempting to bring some sort of reasonable discourse into the theist's realm, you know, especially those that believe things that are just demonstrably factually untrue. Like the Earth is 6,000 years old and evolution is a hoax and all these things. Like those are ideas that we absolutely must get rid of. Those to the very core are rotten. We can't teach things to children that are demonstrably false.
No, because you're not essentially teaching them. You're You're just filling their head with nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, it really bothers me, and I've got two young
Yeah.
girls, and
Which
and to
gives you
think,
even more reason to be bothered than me,
yeah, absolutely, and
because
to
I
think
don't have kids that I know of.
that, to think that somebody could tell them in good faith that God spoke all of everything that we see into
Yeah,
existence 6,000 years ago with the
magical incantation.
yeah, that we had a cute little golem spell, and he made us out of the dirt and formed us, and then he breathed
Yeah,
life into us. Not that that resembles any other origin stories, uh, across the board, but to think that somebody could tell that story and believe it,
yeah.
100% believe that they are doing a service to my children whenever everything else, literally millions of papers and pieces of evidence that corroborate with evolution, to think that they can just ignore that and go off of some sort of answers in Genesis tirade and think that they're doing a service to my children is just blows me away,
I know. Yeah,
and and more hats off to the people that actually fight that, every day,
yep,
the real activist types, the Aaron
yep,
Ra and others, like,
yep. Matt Dillahunty,
yeah, great
uh,
job, guys.
all the street epistemology guys. Although their route in doing so is a little bit more tamed down, friendlier, I guess you might say. But I've heard from those guys like Dan. What's his channel? He uses an accent. Yeah, you reach a certain age and things just start fucking not firing properly anymore.
I'm in
Something
trouble
Dan.
now.
But anyways, and of course, Cordial Curiosity and Anthony Magnabosco. But they've all said that they've gotten emails from people saying, you know what, our conversation actually got me thinking about things, and I am now literally on the fence or starting to head towards the non-belief, which is really good. And I think Socratic method of discourse can stimulate that in people.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that mirrors my own experience. I can't
Mm-hmm.
say, well, we do have a friend, that's a mutual friend of ours that was a Mormon and is now an atheist, and that came about from just general talking.
That's it. Snarky just said objectively, Dan. That's the word I was not thinking.
There you go. Yeah, and but there are several theists that, one good thing about the whole deconversion and the blog and coming out as an atheist is I've made some really good friends who are theists who are interested in the great debate, in the
Yep.
commentary, that are at least honest in their, they have, in my estimation, they have different standards for what they believe to be true, but
Mm-hmm.
but at least they're honest in attempting to obtain something approximating truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but there are several that started out as 6,000-year-old, as young Earth creationists that through various discourses that we've had, have come to the realization that, hey, you know, uh, the Earth is older than we think it is. The flood wasn't global. This evolution thing might have some sort of merit to it. And so,
Right.
at least, even if they haven't let go of their theism, and even if they never let go of their theism, at least the things that are absolutely counterintuitive of the world that we live in have been shed off through conversation, through discourse,
Right.
and through questions.
Sure.
And
Absolutely. And that could lead to that. Even might take a while, but they could eventually find themselves moving away from those beliefs as well.
yeah,
Because
absolutely.
once you start to get that knowledge in there, it's like a wedge, man, and it starts to cause them to question other things too, like
And
quite naturally.
it's one of those things. If I
Look at you,
continue
all
down the
proper
path,
bartender thing with the a little
yeah,
the
I mixed up
pouring.
some extra just in case. It's Saturday night. Uh,
Exactly. I
uh,
forgot to pick up beer, so I'm sitting here with water. Pretty much, if
oh
I want to
man,
drink anything, yeah, that's okay.
the
Mrs.
quickie, that's
Snarky
right,
wants to know. And I'll put it in the description below. She would like to have a link to your blog. So
It's a faithlesssoutherner.com.
faithlesssoutherner.com. Okay.
Yeah, and I haven't. It's been probably 6 months since I've done a post. Like I say, I got really hung up on morality. I probably started the morality part 2 like a dozen times or more, and then well, I've got my stack of various, the moral landscape and works by Hume and all
Sure.
of the great thinkers. I'll get about half of a post typed out and then go,
I
oh
like
no, I
Steve
don't know
Baker.
anything. I probably whenever and I hate to admit this about myself, but probably whenever I wrote my first morality post, I was at the very beginning of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where I'm like, yeah, I got this. This is no problem. And now I'm way down in the bottom, and I don't think I'm ever going to get out of there. Like, so I'm just hanging up morality for now.
Yeah.
And
It's so fluid. It's hard to pinpoint what morality really is, right? I mean,
well,
it's all
and I hate
subjective.
it.
Yeah.
I hate it because it's inevitably where the conversation leads. Whenever you're talking
Yeah.
with a theist,
Right.
it always you can start
Very
at
often.
the flood's horse crap and evolution is true, but then it's going to get how do you know that killing somebody is actually wrong? Like what standard do you use?
I have a
And whenever
simple
you
answer for that.
really and whenever you really try to pin that down in an objective type fashion, the hill gets really slippery.
Mm-hmm.
And so and it's not less slippery, and this is what aggravates me. It's not less slippery for the theist. The theist just says, well, God, and then just ends the conversation.
Yeah,
You
he's
know,
got the easy answer.
and then you go, well, what about slavery and rape and genocide? And
Mhm.
you're like, well, God, and if your version of morality is something akin to divine command theory, then like our conversation's over, period.
Mm.
Because
Yeah, you're gonna get nowhere.
whether you realize it or not, that's subjective morality because it's subjective on the whims of the God. And you can say, well,
Right.
but God doesn't change his mind. And then I encourage you to actually read the Bible,
He doesn't
or the
change his
Quran.
mind, then he's an idiot.
Yeah, absolutely. And so anyways, back to the blog. Very
Yeah.
soon there will be posts leading in a different direction. Something, you know, something more centric to replacing what we lose through religion, which I think that's something that we often underestimate as atheists because we just kind of come out, we're rational and like, yeah, we're atheists and
Screw
who gives a
you.
crap? But
Yeah.
there are benefits, especially community building and especially in my area, the kind of country club Christianity.
Yeah.
If that were to wash away, the sense of community would be completely lost in my town. And so it
Wow.
has to be, we have to replace it with something if we're gonna, because if nothing else, people will at least fake it to have that in their life. So
But I mean, you and I both know that there are obviously secular ways to have that community thing happen.
yeah,
You don't need religion to put a little pretty bow on it. Look at Neighborhood Watch. That's not even religiously
yeah.
affiliated at all, right? And it's a way for the community to look out for each other.
Well, and another
Use
thing,
that.
because I'm from Alabama, so we're religious, if you will, if you'll let me use a very watered down version of that term about football. You know,
Oh, yeah, okay.
Alabama football, Roll Tide for anybody that's a
Hey,
Crimson Tide
dude, I'm
fan.
a fan. I'm a fan. My college team is Alabama.
See, there you go. That's because you like to win. Uh,
Yeah.
and so
I love watching those guys, man.
they're phenomenal, and this year is
Oh,
going to
yeah.
be fantastic. But that sense of community that you get from football, just in general, something that's completely human that we can all agree is totally subjective. There's no divine aspect to football, but people are significantly
Except when they pray
more.
for a
Yeah, well, don't even get me started.
win. Yeah.
Around here, but whenever you're, the lines of football run deeper here than even church does. Because in church you'll hear things like, well, he's nothing but an Auburn fan. And it's absolutely illogical to be an Auburn fan if you enjoy winning. But and I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for saying that. But you know,
I'll put a warning: no Auburn fans allowed to watch.
Absolutely. And so, you know, and like, I love Auburn fans; they're great people. Nobody's perfect, and just because you like a bad team doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you bad at picking sports teams. So.
Don't have talked about that to me, and man, I'm a Canucks fan when it comes to hockey. We're just pathetic right now. So here you go.
So, you know, but I understand that which is lost by religion can be replaced easily through secular means, through, you know, even if it's something like Doctor Who or a shared, you know, Trekkie. Yeah, absolutely. You know, things like that, football, other means. But, you know, I think that for a lot of theists, and I think you can kind of see this in the groundswell that Jordan Peterson's brought up, they're inherently afraid to lose the substructure that a belief in something higher than man provides. And right. I think that's a real problem. And I think we do ourselves a disservice as a community to kind of disregard those arguments. And so,
yeah, for sure.
I plan on attempting to in some way, shape, or form address the reasons why people like Jordan Peterson and Deepak Chopra have become so influential in our culture. Because by any measurable metric, Peterson, and I don't know how much you know about him, but I've been following him.
Oh, I know about Peterson. He's a fellow Canadian.
And
we've known him since before you guys did. So
yeah, absolutely. And I followed I can't remember how many subscribers he had on YouTube whenever I joined up. It was 100,000 or 200,000, something like that. Like, he was small. It was back before practically anything happened. I stumbled upon him.
He's got over a million now, I think.
Yeah, he's everywhere you look now.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know, this guy, by every measurable metric, he's not a Christian, you know. And that's a very loose term for me, because
doesn't he consider himself a deist?
Getting him to nail down what he would actually be considered as.
He just tosses word salad around. So
yeah, you know, and to be somebody that's so, because certain parts of his message are desperately needed in today's culture, and that's why I hate cult figures like him, because certain aspects, like the real life nitty gritty aspects, and he does a wonderful job linking biological evolution with belief structures, and then he just takes it straight out in the left field, and goes on to some sort of vague sense of godhood, but at the same time won't rebuke fundamentalist theology. You know, the those who would love to see homosexuals thrown off of rooftops, and love to see gay marriage stopped, and love to see women's rights revoked, and things like that. Like, he won't stand up to those sort of things in any meaningful fashion. So, you know, but the one thing that I can take away from his rise to popularity is that there's something that the secular community is missing, you know, and I may be totally wrong about this, and I hope I am, but the thirst and how well his message was received as sort of a Christianity 2.0, like, I can be rational and believe in God, really, I don't know, it puzzles me. So, like I say, hopefully the next few blog posts will do something to combat that sort of the popularity that he's gaining, and the thirst for the message that he provides, because for the majority of it, it's just gibberish, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
It's nothing more than platitudes and extremely obvious statements and veiled.
He likes to wrap his opinion on things in fancy words. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, and anybody can do that. I mean, I can sit here and go, well,
Sure.
well, look, you're the axiomatic presupposition that you hold most dear is directly equated to with what you consider to be divine, and like that statement means
What?
nothing. Yeah,
Right. Wait,
that
what?
statement means nothing. But a theist watching may go, oh, so he believes in God, you know,
Yeah.
and
All those fancy godly words.
yeah, absolutely, and faux intellectualism,
Yeah.
so who knows?
Oh,
But
don't get. No, Peterson is a smart guy, but his communication skills are just so. I don't know what. I don't know even how you would pinpoint him on that. I mean, he just, like I said, he just throws around word salady sounding. Sounds like intelligence, but and I mean, to be able to use these words in the proper context does take some intelligence, but. When they're
yeah,
combined together in such a string where it just becomes rambling, it's like, what the fuck?
yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the, and he's a brilliant orator. I mean, his ability to captivate an audience. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I get wrapped up in his stuff. I actually genuinely enjoyed his biblical lectures, even though I disagreed with 95% of what he said, or something like
Right.
that. Like I enjoy listening to the guy speak, and his talks with Sam Harris and uh,
Yeah, which are actually pretty
recently
good.
were really good. Because Sam really held his feet to the fire on certain issues. But
He
he still,
absolutely did.
it's one of those. He's a smart guy who has an impressive vocabulary. That, and I really believe in his case, he's scared to lose what religion provides, even though he knows better. You know,
Yeah, that
and
might be sure.
and he equates atheism, and this is absolutely factually correct. He equates atheism with the atrocities of the 20th century, communism, Mao, Stalin, Pol Pot, things like that. And so
Yeah.
he views, and wrongfully so, but he
Yep.
views that if we continue down the Sam Harris path, we will wind back up in communist Russia and Maoist China and things like that. And
Yeah,
and
which is
again,
nonsense.
that's a totally nonsense, as you said, proposition. But somewhere along the line, he got that in his head. He got that meme implanted deep, and it hasn't left. And so I think even though he knows better, he wants to try to uh, rectify religious belief with rational thinking, and like more power to him. But in so doing, he vilifies the fundamentalists, and that's what really bothers me about him, because he won't come out and say, "Look, guys, Jesus didn't actually raise from the dead." I think of this as all just some sort of archetypal
Well,
narrative.
not physically, anyways, because that's
Yeah,
impossible. Once you
yeah,
have
absolutely.
cellular death occur, you're not fucking resurrecting anything.
Yeah, it's impossible. And so instead of coming out and uh, being straightforward and saying, this was a metaphorical death and resurrection, and this was a grand narrative, and this was an archetype. He is deliberately obtuse whenever it comes to
Right.
those topics, and in doing so, he emboldens the far right, the really fundamentalists,
Oh, he sure
and
does. Yeah.
and like I like the guy, but I
I'm
like
sure it's
well,
great to go have a beer with as long as you don't bring any of that shit up. But,
yeah, absolutely. And maybe I don't like the guy. I like certain parts of his message,
yeah.
and I wish that he would, cut clear. But I do think that the following that he has gathered um, is indicative of a need that the secular atheistic community is not fulfilling as well as they should be. And so,
I think that is slowly changing. I think with some of the bigger names that are getting more prevalent in the public eye, like Aaron Ron, Dillahunty,
yeah,
and the like, I think that will eventually, in my opinion, I think that will lead to a landslide of more people coming out like that
yeah,
and
absolutely. And
being
you
in
got to, I
public eye.
mean, this sort of activism is incredibly infant. I mean,
Yes.
like, I don't even know who you'd consider the first great openly atheist public intellectual,
You could
but
lean
maybe
on Bertrand Russell. You could lean on,
maybe David
oh,
Hume
yeah, Hume
would
too,
be
sure.
who I would consider maybe the first like influential. But
Like
then you
Dawkins,
have you have
Hawking.
a yeah, then you have a vast span of time until you get to Russell. And then literally within the last, I'd say maybe, well, since new atheism, which is a term that I deplore, but,
Yes.
uh,
Atheism
you
isn't
know,
new.
yeah,
It's
it's
like,
the
what the fuck are you
sameism.
talking? I think they mean
You
new
know,
atheists that are pushing the
yeah.
agenda.
And so
Agenda.
since Hitchens, since, uh,
Yeah, Hitch is another good one.
yeah, Hitchens, gosh, why in the world did he have to croak so soon?
Oh, God punished him, didn't you
Hitchens,
know?
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Just ask SJ. Uh,
Thanks God, you dick.
yeah, I'm glad that he let all them Catholic child abusers get away with everything and decides to punish a genuinely good person who just happens not to believe in him. But
Yeah,
uh,
right.
you know, it's literally within the last 20 years that, at least in my opinion, that atheism as an idea has really started to spring. So it's still going
Mm.
through some growing pains, and it's incredibly infant. It's a baby in the world of ideas, at least in something that would be approximating socially acceptable ideas. Because
Sure,
even
it's
with
taken
my,
some time to get to the level it's at now. So,
yeah, I mean, my deconversion, whenever I came out, and I did it via blog post, and then of course linked it to my Facebook account, uh,
mm. Oh, we should hook
was
up on
met.
Facebook. I'm not sure we've done that. Have we done that?
No, I don't believe we have.
Okay,
Uh,
well, let's do that.
yeah, absolutely. Was met with such a mixed range because, like I say, there was my core friend group that was like, "There's no way you're an atheist. You're a good person." And then you have to say, "No, I am an atheist, and atheists can be good people. Like, get real."
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's a cultural aversion to atheism, and I used to think the same way. Whenever, gosh, I can't remember. There was a band that I listened to whenever I was a teenager that I found out the lead singer was an atheist, and this was back, I was like 13, 14, heavily involved in church, and I really liked this band. Whenever I found out he was an atheist, I stopped listening to the band. Like, that's how
Wow.
serious, it was like, no, I'm not doing that
Which
anymore.
band is this that you're referring to?
Gosh, I want to say the
It's definitely not.
Alexandria, or it was one of those like prog rock, like screamo. I can't remember.
Don't you even think about mixing prog rock and screamo together.
Well, no, 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 no.
They're
uh,
totally different.
I'm trying to remember I'm trying to remember the band.
Alexis
Because
on
I
Fire.
found them back later in life and thought, dang, what have I missed? I've got 3 albums to catch up on because of this stupid theism idea. Look at this good music I missed. But that's the kind of reaction, and I got that reaction from certain people. Like, I had a guy, we went out for dinner, and he found out I was an atheist, a family friend, and luckily we've been able to resolve the differences. But
Good. That's good.
you know, he looked at me, and it's me and the wife and the kids and him and his children and everything else. And he's like, "You're an atheist." I'm like, "Yeah." So you believe that we evolved from monkeys? And I was like, "Yeah,
No.
not exactly. No, that's not how.
Yes.
But essentially, we evolved alongside monkeys, and we can go into the greater detail later." And so he says, "So you just think that we're nothing but random processes, and you just kind of have to go with the flow and say, well, no, it's not random, but to say that there's not a guiding hand is fair." And so he looked at me dead in the eyes and said, "So whenever you look at your daughters, your two beautiful little girls, all you see is sacks of meat." And
No, that what
and
what
yeah,
what?
and for once in my life, I was struck absolutely speechless.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
sat there and looked at him like, what in the, you know, but upon further evaluation of the conversation, like, that's what he equated not believing in a higher power with. Like,
Mhm.
if there is no higher power, then all we are is sacks of meat. And on some level, yes,
Indoctrination.
all we are is sacks of meat. but that's not all we are. And so,
No, we put value on these
yeah,
sacks of.
absolutely. You
Right?
know,
We're
if
not
you use,
sacks of meat.
yeah,
Like Bender on Futurama would call meat bags, right?
there you go, yeah. And so, but that was, and then the amount of times I've been told I was going to hell, and the amount of times that people were shocked that I didn't believe in hell. These things, these sort of the idea of atheism that people have, especially in the Deep South, in the Bible Belt, uh, is woefully inadequate to what the community actually is, and I think it's
Mm,
in large part due because it's almost a social death sentence to come out as an atheist here. Especially if your identity is deeply rooted in church. Because, like I say,
right.
I don't know of any other open atheists in my town. And
You might be surprised. Some people might be trying to keep it under wraps, right?
I mean, statistically, that's almost certainly the case. That
Mm,
there are many atheists around me, but they're all just closeted, or
mm,
at least agnostic, or people that don't believe exactly what the Bible teaches, et cetera, et cetera. So,
right. This is why I have these kinds of conversations, because those kinds of people, for sure, are out there looking for stories or just anything that talks about, because they're on the fence and they want to hear other people and how they dealt with being in the position that they're in. So that's why I decided to do these kinds of videos instead of any other, because I just felt there was a lack of these and it was a niche that I could fill. So having these conversations might help people in their processes of coming out.
yeah, I agree completely, and I definitely think what you're doing here is a much needed uh, void that needs to be filled in the community, because there are people that have had experiences similar to those that I've had, and other people that have been on your channel, um, that may not be able to take that last step. Uh,
Right.
and that's one reason that I decided eventually, um, to come out openly as an atheist, because there is some sort of there is a little bit of hesitation there, at least on my side, because
Sure.
I look at it and I say these people are comfortable in their belief systems. They're like me. They've never thought about anything else prior to my missions trip, prior to being exposed to Eastern religions and people that believed in them. You
Right.
know, and so who am I to rock their boat? Like, they're going to go through life. They're going to get married. They're going to have a good life. They're going to go to church every Sunday. And really, who do I think that I am to cause them to challenge their beliefs? But
Right.
then, I came to the realization that if you've never actually examined your beliefs, if you've never taken time to scrutinize why you believe a certain thing, regardless of the proposition at hand, your political leanings, what anything that's important in life, if you haven't taken the time to really buckle down as to why you believe it, then
Mm.
is it really a belief that's worth holding? And so, if my blog, if my Facebook post, if my Twitter feed, less so on the Twitter feed, can cause somebody to at least examine their own beliefs, then I view my job as complete.
Mm.
And even if that takes them through a crisis of faith and a low spot in their belief system, I still view it as worth it,
Yeah.
because
You just have to kind of let them know that what they're feeling right then, if they're starting to feel, I don't know, panic or anxiety because of the disappearing, that it's short term, and once the reason starts kicking in, they'll get past that and they'll feel better after.
yeah, because at least in my experience, and this may be something that would help people that are on the fence or something like that. In my experience, uh, right now, I am significantly happier,
Yeah.
have a greater peace of mind. I don't fear death the same way that I
Yeah.
used to. I don't have the
Yeah.
existential anxiety that I used to.
Yeah.
My proclivity for becoming depressed has gone significantly down. You
Yeah.
know, these things, there was a rough period during deconversion, but at the outset, where I'm at now, I'm significantly happier, healthier, and more stable as a person. My relationship with my wife has vastly improved. My relationship with my kids has
That's
vastly
awesome.
improved, you know, and never that they were bad in the first place, but the
I
exponential,
see it differently after.
yeah, you know, the exponential increase in general well-being is worth sacrificing the belief that I might live forever, or that there might be some sort of higher power looking after me. So it's a process, but it's one that once you get through, it's so much better on the other side.
I have a question here for you from Mrs. Snarky. She's asking, are you a reliabilist or a coherentist? Because she doesn't think you're a foundationalist. I think she's meaning in your previous beliefs.
That's a really, I don't know, that's a difficult question to answer. I
Well,
think
how would you describe yourself then?
in relation to my past beliefs, or current, what is she, what is she currently referring to?
I think
Because
she's
I
got
will
something here
admit that I'm not.
that's this just state of existence in terms of how he assesses truth statements and beliefs. Oh, I see. Okay, I see what you mean. So a reliabilist, coherentist, or foundationalist.
Oh man, how
I
I,
know it's a tricky topic too, right? So
that's something that honestly right now I can't answer with any good faith. You know, as far as,
you can't answer it with faith. Remember, faith isn't
well, yeah,
knowledge.
that's true. Faith in the good trust metric. Um,
Yeah, it's
it
something to ponder, I guess.
it's definitely something to ponder, and it's something that the nature of truth and knowledge and things like that is definitely something that I would say that that is an ongoing study topic for myself, because I vacillate,
I
you
think
know.
it's for every human being. It is.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I really I couldn't pinpoint down what I think in any realm, in any sort of coherent fashion. You know, and I hate to sound like Jordan Peterson here. It'd take me 40 hours to answer that question. You know,
Right.
but these are still things that I personally am struggling through in a similar sense
Yeah.
to the topics of morality and things like that. Like, man, there's so much out there to know, and there's so
Oh,
much out there that,
I don't think we have big enough brains to know it all, to be
no,
honest.
absolutely not. You know, and and again, I'm not that bright of a person across the board, and
You
so
could have fooled me, man.
these things take me a very long time to digest.
Sure.
And so, you know, like I say, with morality and other subjects, like I'm not sure I'll ever get to something that I would consider a coherent, uh, verifiable moral framework. Like, I
Right.
wish I could read The Moral Landscape by Sam Harris and go, yeah, that guy's spot on. But then you read a
Mm.
rebuttal to it, and then you read the
Mm.
rebuttal to the rebuttal, and everything in some sense makes sense. So,
Well,
you know,
it's
I
because
think,
I think morals are fluid because they
yeah,
change throughout social structures throughout our history, right?
yeah, absolutely. And so I think that you could get something approximating the truth, but I'm not sure that you could ever actually get to the nugget at the center. You know,
Mm. Mm.
everything that we do is kind of a best guess, and this is me at the very edge of my in my belief system, so I can't be held accountable for anything that I say right now. But, you know, you know, this is pushing. This is whenever the apologists would sneak Jesus in, smuggle
Right.
Jesus. Uh, you know, I'm pushing out at the edge, but you know, I would say that we could get, but everything that we could possibly do would be approximations of
Mm.
what across the board. Whenever it even in reference to truth or objective moral standards, things like that. Like, these might exist, but we as evolved meat bags will may never get exactly where we need to be. And even if we got there, how in the crap would we know that we were there? You know, is another great question.
Because we'd have some other angle we'd be taking it at and be like, well, are we there? I don't even know. Right?
Yeah, so all it takes is some jackass on YouTube to make a rebuttal video and throw everything out of whack.
Did he just call me a jackass? No,
no, not you. Definitely.
No, I know. I just
all the other jackasses.
Some people, on all the other jackasses. Yeah. All right. Well, you know, I mean, because I think the best way to just think for yourself what you think is morally right for you. Like I don't want to be killed, so I'm not going to go kill anybody. I don't want my stuff stolen, so I don't steal from people. Sometimes I steal from big corporations, but that's a whole other story. But anyways, you know, I'd steal from a corporation that sold food if I wanted to feed a family that was starving. The whole Robin Hood scenario thing. But
oh yeah,
there's something like that's where you juggle this stuff, right? So what's more moral? These guys making shit tons of money, or this poor starving family that could use just a fucking smidgen of their food to feed them, right? Yeah, I guess our morals are our own personal. They are subjective, but as society changes too, they become fluid again, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And on a macro level, those type of moral quandaries aren't a topic of contention for me.
Yeah.
Because, you know, especially like don't murder. Of course, it depends on how you define murder and things like that. But we can all agree that I don't want to die, and so it's not. You know, from a purely selfish moral standpoint, it's easy to say, "Hey, I don't want to die, so I'm not going to kill anybody." Whatever you get to like deeper aspects, you know, is morality in any sense objective rather than subjective? And the deeper underlying truth. That's where I feel like, at least for myself, things start to break down a little bit.
Right.
That's honest in their pursuit of a coherent moral framework. I think that's a struggle that we have to live with as humans. And so,
yeah, I'd agree. Sure. All right. Well, we passed the hour.
Uh-oh.
So that's fine. I've very much been enjoying our conversation. So why don't we'll put a cap on this, and then we'll come together again in an after party. So all you guys watching, if any of you would like to be in the after party, just send me a quick message on Twitter. You guys know how to do that. And again, Evans, man, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for doing what you do. I think it's a very necessary thing, and I've enjoyed it since I stumbled across it, and really I stumbled across you on Twitter, but definitely thanks. And this is my first foray into YouTube, so
wow,
like this that I've done.
I got the Papa's cherry, kids.
There's not many of those left, so so consider yourself privileged.
All right. I'm good. All right. So again, guys, just send me a message if you'd like to jump in the after party, or let me know in the chat here, and I'll give you guys a link, and we'll talk a little bit more about morals and some other stuff that we feel we should talk about, and just have some fun too, because my after parties are generally more about the fun part of stuff. So. Again, Evans, dude, thank you so much. And guys, follow him on Twitter. It's @FaithlessSouth, and they're the 3 S's in the middle. And once he gets a YouTube channel, I'll re-edit this video, or once he gets one going, pardon me, I'll re-edit this video and put his link in there as well. And we'll share the shit out of it on Twitter, I'm sure, because you've got a great mind there, sir. And I think your voice needs to be added to the collective. So you shouldn't wait anymore on that. And if you need any advice, there's tons of us that can help you. So
fantastic, guys. I sure do appreciate it, man.
Yeah, and you're an upstanding member of our little family community. So anyway, thanks everyone for tuning in and hanging out with Evans and me. My next interview is with the Tales from the Church, and that's on Monday, on the 1st at around 4-ish. So come and hang out with that one. And like I said, send me a link or send me a message, and I'll send you a link for the after party. And my final words, of course, are always, remember, kids, it's called faith because it's not knowledge.